Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Vallier.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
My name is Ash Vallier, spelled Vallier.
And where do you work?
I work at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And where did you go to school?
I got my bachelor degree in biochemistry and cell biology from UC San Diego and a master's degree in biomedical forensic sciences from Boston University.
Now, following your education, where did you go to work from there?
Directly after I got my degree at Boston University, I worked at the Broad Institute.
And what did you do at the Broad Institute?
I did quality control checks of items that potentially could be tested for pharmaceutical use.
Now, how long have you worked at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A little over 6 years.
Now, is the state lab accredited?
It is.
And by whom?
ANAB.
And what does ANAB stand for?
It stands for ANSI National Accreditation Board.
And the ANSI within the ANAB, what does that stand for?
That is another acronym that I don't recall right now.
Now, as part of that accreditation process, do you undergo any sort of type of proficiency testing?
I do.
And can you explain to the jury what that proficiency testing process consists of?
A proficiency test is a test that is given from an outside agency in the discipline that you do casework in, that you would work through like a normal case, but it has an end expected result at the end.
And how often do you undergo proficiency testing?
Every year.
And what areas do you specifically undergo proficiency testing in?
I've done proficiency tests in gunshot primer residue and physical match analysis.
And have you successfully completed each of those proficiency tests that you've taken?
I have.
Now, when you initially joined the State Police Lab, what was your position and title that you were hired for?
I was hired as a forensic scientist 1.
Now, can you please explain to the jury what your duties and responsibilities were as a forensic scientist 1?
So a forensic scientist 1 is the introductory level. It's when you start your training in whatever discipline you're going to be trained in and quality control checks. After you've been at the laboratory for over a year and you're signed off to do casework, you become a forensic scientist 2.
And you're currently a forensic scientist 2, is that correct?
Yes.
What is the difference between a forensic scientist 1 and a forensic scientist 2 at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A forensic scientist 2 has been at the lab for over a year and can do casework.
Now, just in general terms, what does the trace unit do or examine within the State Police Crime Laboratory?
I'm a part of the Trace Arson and Explosives Unit. So we analyze a wide range of pieces of evidence. So trace covers a lot of small things. So paint, fibers, glass, gunshot primer residue, physical matches. Arson covers fire debris evidence, and explosives covers explosives.
Now, specifically with reference to physical match analysis, can you explain to the jury, just in general terms at first, how is that analysis performed?
So physical match analysis is piecing broken things together to see if they were at once a single item. Generally, you look at the questioned item first, the item that you don't know specifically where it came from. Look at that, and then you would look at the known item, which is an item with a known source, like specifically like this window or like this vehicle. They're analyzed at separate times, and then if it looks like there could potentially be a physical match, you would analyze them together and see if they have a mechanical fit.
Now, when you retrieve items just in general to do some sort of physical match analysis, where do you get those items from?
We have evidence storage locations at the laboratory.
And how are they typically packaged when you receive them?
They can be packaged in cardboard boxes, brown paper bags, heat-sealed plastic bags. It depends on the individual items.
And when you're doing this analysis as far as the physical match analysis, what do you do to your bench between your examination of separately packaged items?
I mean, before I do any analysis, I bleach my bench, clean my tools, and then put down a fresh sheet of butcher paper.
And why do you do that?
To make sure everything's clean.
Now, again, speaking more in general terms, on what types of evidence can you perform a physical match analysis?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. In general terms, with your work within the lab, on what types of items can you perform a physical match analysis?
A lot. Anything that has a broken or irregular edge.
Would that include glass?
Yes.
Would that include plastic?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that would also include?
Any sort of like polymer, metals.
And when you're doing a physical match analysis, what instruments do you utilize in the course of that analysis?
Generally, I'll use a stereo zoom microscope. Depending on the size of the items compared, I can use other microscopes as well.
Now, what is a stereo zoom microscope?
A stereo zoom microscope is a microscope that's mounted on a stand, so it gives a wider range of view that you can look at larger items.
And how are you using that specifically in your physical match analysis of, let's say, items of plastic?
I'll use it to look at the edges and see if there's any like defining characteristics along those broken edges.
Now, as you're going through your analysis, do you document your work as you go?
I do.
And how do you do that?
With handwritten notes and with photos.
Now, at some point were you assigned to perform some work on lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes.
And what type of work were you assigned to do in this case?
I was asked to do physical match analysis, and then later on I was asked to look at, do some trace recovery, look at some debris.
Starting with the physical match analysis, how many different items approximately were you asked to look at?
Over 10?
Several, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And how were each of those items packaged when you received them?
So the questioned items were packaged first in a large paper bag, and then each item was individually packaged in a smaller brown paper bag within that container.
Now, again, just in general terms, because you've used it a couple times, when you say questioned item versus known item, as it pertains to this analysis in this case, what were the questioned items generally, and what was the known item?
The question items were items labeled as coming from a road, and the known item was labeled as coming from a taillight from a vehicle.
Now, in this case, did you perform your physical match analysis in the same manner that you've previously described based on your education, training, and experience within the lab?
Yes.
Now, initially, you had examined some various plastic and glass items, and there was a drinking straw in there as well, correct?
Yes.
And specifically, as far as the item numbers that you looked at in this physical match analysis, could you provide the jury with a list of just the item numbers first to start with?
May
Your
I?
Honor.
Do you have your report with you, Ms. Vallier?
I do.
Okay. Is there any objection, Mr. Neely, to using the report?
No objection at all.
So feel free to use your report.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So the questioned items labeled as coming from the road were item 7-5, item 7-6, 7-8, 7-9, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, 7-16, and 7-19. And the known item labeled coming from the passenger side taillight is item 3-1.
Now, Ms. Vallier, within those specific item numbers of how things are labeled at your lab, if there are different pieces associated with the same item. How is it that you labeled those, specifically in this physical match analysis here?
So some of the items had multiple pieces within that item. So I labeled them A, B, C, etc., depending on how many pieces there were.
Now, if you could, please explain to the jury just, again, the process that you followed in your examination of each of those items.
So first I looked at the questioned items, the items labeled as coming from the road. I looked at, I documented the overall package because they were all packaged in the same container, the same brown paper bag. Documented that individually. Inside of it, there were a bunch of individual brown paper bags. Documented that, and I went one at a time through them, opening each paper bag, taking written notes, taking photos of the items inside. Within each item, I looked to see if any of those pieces fit together. And I cleaned my bench in between the items.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
And Your Honor, for the quotes, I've shown Mr. Yannetti all these photos in advance.
Okay. Is there an objection to any of them, Mr.
No
Nate?
objection, Your Honor.
All right, so why don't we just go ahead and mark them all as evidence?
Your Honor, if I could, I was going to take them item by item.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Ms. Vallier, I'm showing you 4 photographs. You recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize those to be?
These are photos that I took of item 3-1.
And again, what was the description associated with item 3-1?
Passenger side taillight.
And was that description further give sort of a specific vehicle or license plate associated with the vehicle that the taillight came?
It does. Massachusetts 3GC684.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce in a minute the next exhibit A through D.
Right, those are common. That's why I wanted to just mark them all because they're all common, right?
That's fine. If the court prefers, I can provide them.
All right.
Exhibits 170A through 170D.
May I approach with the remainder, Your Honor?
Yes. And if you have them in sections, we can do that.
This way I'm showing you 2 more photographs. Just ask if you recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-5.
And again, from your report, what was the description in reference to item 7-5?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're fine. It's Mr. Lamb. Yes.
Okay. Piece of plastic, red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
And Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce in a minute the next exhibit A and B.
Okay.
Exhibit 171A and B.
My apologies, Your Honor. With the court's permission, may I publish some of those
Yes.
photos to the jury? Ms. Gilman, if I could first ask for photograph 2122. And Ms. Vallier, what's up on the screen, that is the bag associated with the passenger side taillight or the known item, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2125. And Ms. Gilman, if you could just enlarge a little bit towards the bottom where the ruler is. Now, Ms. Vallier, what's up on the screen now as far as the sort of notations there, who made those?
I did.
And how do you know that you were the one who made those?
That's my handwriting, and those are my initials.
So the AMV is for your name, correct?
Yes.
And with respect to each of the items that you photographed, you had photographs that were taken of sort of what was in the evidence bag in total, displayed on your table that you would clean with the solution and everything else, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom out a little bit to show the item. And again, what's up on the screen, that is item 3-1, the known item as far as the tail light from the defendant's vehicle.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2126. And Ms. Vallier, if you could just describe for the jury, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Those are those same items, just turned over.
And lastly, for this set, Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2135. And again, same item as far as 3-1, the tail light taken from the defendant's vehicle.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for photograph 1905. And Ms. Vallier, as far as with each of these items, you take photographs when they're inside the bag and then once you take them out of the bag, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1908. And what are we looking at in this photograph?
The contents of item 7-5.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
We'll need two more photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-6.
And that's one of the bag and then one when the item is taken out of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the description for item 7-6?
Piece of plastic, clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
And retrieve those. Your Honor, I'll call them up to seek to introduce in a minute as the next exhibit, A and B.
Okay.
172 A and B.
And with the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1921. And then photograph 1924. And what's depicted up on the screen is that what you just have before you as the photograph that you took of item 7-6 recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs. You review those. Can you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize as?
Photos I took of item 7-8.
And one of the bag and then one of the items removed from the bag. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is the description associated with item 7-8?
Piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Call them up to seek to introduce in a minute as the next exhibit, A and B. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish those to the jury.
Yes.
Exhibits 173 A and B.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1931 and then 1934. And Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little on those items, please. And Ms. Vallier, again, what are we looking at in this photograph of item 7 dash? What are we looking at again in this photograph? Excuse me.
Photos of item 7-8.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs. Those. And you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-9 and 7-19.
And as far as the first photograph, as far as the bag, and then second with the items taken out of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes.
So 7-9 and 7-19 were contained in the same bag.
They were. I then separated them into two separate packages.
And as far as 7-9 and 7-19, respectively, if you could tell the jury what was the description for each of those items.
Item 7-9 was pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Item 7-19 is trace item, black straw, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Your Honor, will seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B. May I publish, Your Honor?
Hold on,
Oh, forgive me.
174A and 174B.
now you can publish.
My apologies. Ms. Gilman, if I could have 1958, please. And then 1962. And again, Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
The contents of that bag, item 7-9 and item 7-19.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs, do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize as?
Photos of item 7-10.
And again, one of the bag and one of the contents of the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what was the description for item 7-10.
Piece of plastic, red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I want to seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 175A and B.
May I publish that for the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 1952. And 1956. And again, Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Photo of item 7-10.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs, do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-11.
And again, one photo of the bag and one photo of the items outside of the bag.
Yes.
And again, if you could, please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-11.
Piece of plastic, 6, red, clear, and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth is seeking to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 176A and B.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1979 and 1982. Again, Ms. Vallier, I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little on the items themselves. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Photo of item 7-11.
These are photos, again, that you took in the lab during the course of your comparative or physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photos, if you could look at those. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-12.
And again, photograph of the bag, photograph of the items outside of the bag.
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what's the description of item 7-12.
Trace item, 14 glass and clear plastic, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Now, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce in a minute the next
Okay.
exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 177A and 177B.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2015 and 2018. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom in a little on the items. Thank you. And Ms. Vallier, again, can you describe what's depicted up on the screen?
A photo I took of item 7-12.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Two other photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-13.
And again, one of the bag and then one with the items removed from the bag.
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description for item 7-13.
Piece of plastic, red and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'll love to seek to introduce in a minute next exhibit A and B.
Exhibit 178A and 178B.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1997. And 2000. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could, please zoom in on the items. Thank you. And Ms. Vallier, directing your attention to the screen, can you describe for the jury what is depicted on the screen now?
A photo I took of item 7-13.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photos. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-14.
And again, one of the bag and one of the item removed from the bag.
Yes.
And again, could you please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-14?
Pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I want to seek to introduce as the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 179A and B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2009 and 2012. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in on the item. And Ms. Vallier, as far as what's depicted on the screen, again, if you could describe for the jury what that is.
A photo of item 7-14.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, if you could recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize as?
Photos of item 7-15.
And again, one of the bag and one of the items taken from the bag, correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description associated with item 7-15.
Piece of plastic, 3 clear and 5 red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
The problem I'll seek to introduce in a minute as the
Okay.
next exhibit, A and B.
180A and 180B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2072.
The last exhibit number,
Yes.
Yes.
And 2077, please. Again, if you could zoom just a little as far as the items are concerned. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Item 7-15.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, do you recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-16.
And again, one of the bag and then one of the contents from the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what was the description associated with item 7-16.
Piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'm all to seek to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibit 181A and B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2036 and 2040. And Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little. Thank you very much. And Ms. Vallier, if you could, please describe for the jury what we're looking at in this particular photograph.
This is item 7-16.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, with respect to each of these items that you examined in your physical match analysis, again, as far as the process is concerned, with the questioned items, what are you doing with reference to each of those questioned items first?
First, I document them as you've seen. I'll see if any of those within the item have a physical match with each other. And then I'll package that away and look at all the questioned items before I compare inter-questioned items to see if there are any physical matches in between all of the 7- items.
And as far as your notes are concerned, what is it that you're noting in reference to each of those items as far as what characteristics of the item are you taking note of?
I'll note the size, the color, and the material.
And what, if any, measurements do you take of each of those respective items as well?
I'll take the length and width of each item.
Now, with respect, starting with item 3-1, the passenger side taillight from the defendant's vehicle, sort of internally within that item 3-1, what did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis within that item alone?
Within item 3-1, I believe 4 of the pieces fit together.
And, Your Honor, if the witness may refer to her notes
Yes.
as to, thank you.
Yes, four of the pieces fit together within item 3-1.
And which 4 of the pieces?
Pieces A, B, D, and F.
And as far as the labeling of those pieces of an individual item, let's just start with item 3-1. A, B, D, and F, how are they labeled, and how do you sort of physically label those items?
We have a label maker in the lab, so I'll print out the case number, the item number, and then A, B, C, and my initials, and that goes physically on each of those items, or all of those pieces.
So if any of those items had a sticker on it with a letter or something associated with that, that would be something that you did during the course of your physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-5, piece of plastic red recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis just within that single item?
There was no physical match noted among those 3 pieces of apparent plastic.
And when you say no physical match found from the different pieces within that item, what does that mean?
The broken edges of each piece did not align.
So the broken edges of the individual pieces within item 7-5 did not fit together with the broken edges of pieces within item 7-5, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to item 7-6, a clear piece of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road, what did you conclude based on your physical match analysis just pertaining to that item 7-6?
So this item was 2 pieces of colorless apparent plastic, and there was no physical match noted between those two pieces.
Now, with reference to item 7-8, red and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road, what did you conclude in regard to your physical match analysis just with the pieces contained within item 7-8?
So there were 14 pieces. Pieces C and D fit together, and pieces E and F fit together.
And when you say fit together, is there a term of art used within your field called a mechanical fit?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean as far as what is a mechanical fit?
So a mechanical fit and a physical match are the same thing. It's when the broken edges align together to show that they were once a single item.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-9, pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis of just the individual pieces contained within item 7-9?
So this item had 3 pieces, and no physical match was found between those.
Turning your attention to item 7-10, red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able, that is a single item, is that correct?
Correct.
So no physical match because there's nothing to match, it's just one piece, correct?
Correct.
And turning your attention to item 7-11, identified as 6 red, clear, and black pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude in regard to your physical match analysis just within those pieces contained within 7-11?
So that item had 6 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 6.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-12, which was identified as 14 pieces of glass and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Again, what did you conclude from your physical match analysis just from the various pieces contained within item 7-12?
So there were 14 pieces overall. Pieces B, C, D, F, and K fit together mechanically as one unit. And then pieces E and I fit together mechanically as one unit. And pieces M and N fit together mechanically as one unit.
Now, through your examination of these pieces in particular and other pieces as well, did you note any debris contained on the pieces that you located?
Yes.
And can you say anything as far as what that debris was, or was there any analysis done of that debris specifically?
I just note that there was debris present, and I package it into a tin that's retained with the original packaging.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-13, that was a piece of plastic, red and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, just with respect to your physical match analysis of the various pieces of 7-13, what did you conclude?
So that item had 3 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 3.
And again, with reference to item 7-14, piece of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road, that was again a single item, correct?
A single piece, yes.
So I'll turn your attention to item 7-15, 3 clear and 5 red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road, is that correct?
Yes.
And what were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis, again, just from the various pieces contained within item 7-15?
So there were 8 pieces in this one. Pieces F and H fit together mechanically.
Turning your attention to, lastly for this purpose, item 7-16, piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis just contained within the pieces of that single item, 7-16?
So that item had 7 pieces. Pieces A, C, and D fit together mechanically.
Now, Ms. Vallier, once you had examined each of those pieces individually, what did you do next in your analysis?
Next, I compared all of the inter-questioned, these items 7-5 to 7-16. I compared them to see if there was a mechanical fit amongst those, between those items.
Mr. Lally, is this a good place for our break?
That's perfect. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, jurors, we'll take our morning break. We'll see you back here in about 15, 20 minutes. Thanks for you can walk out right with the jurors.
Please rise for the jury.
And can I see counsel for a minute, please?
violation. There is no remedy for the defense. However, to the extent, and given Your Honor nonetheless asked me for an answer in time, we would need 4 days to be able to address it. We will not ever be able to recover strategically or substantively from it, given all that's been presented to the jury, and it will be very difficult to figure out how we're going to go present a defense after we've already presented to the jury our defense and our cross-examination. It's not really structurally possible to simply take 4 days and address Mr. Burgess, because we can't go back to all the witnesses I just mentioned and others and start crossing them and eliciting testimony with this new time period in mind. But I wanted to answer the question, Your Honor, respectfully. It would be 4 days for us to even go from where we are now and then try to alter not only witnesses such as Arca, but DeSogra and Gaffney and other types of witnesses that we have in that regard. So, Your Honor, respectfully, that is my response.
All right, does the Commonwealth want to be heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Respectfully, Your Honor, the defense is very confused. They attempt to confuse the issue. They attempt to confuse Your Honor about what the impact would be. This has never been a change. The government is not changing their timeline. The Commonwealth is not changing any information. The Commonwealth is not offering anything that affects in any way the testimony of witnesses. It's notable in the argument there is no relationship to the facts or the actual report that was provided. The Commonwealth has always provided the data, which they have, and they hadn't a chance to analyze. And the interpretation of the data has been different between the parties. We have been clear from the beginning at the time in which the infotainment system shows that there was a collision. We've been clear. And the data has been clear. That has never changed. That data in the telestream system is based on a clock in the Lexus, which both sides know full well is different than a clock in an iPhone. You can see all the productions of Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation where it shows that time, 12:31:43, has never changed. Also, it has been clear that both sides appreciate that there is a variance between the clock in the Lexus, which leads to that system information, and a clock in an iPhone. In fact, the defense was so aware of it, they hired an expert, Mr. DeSorga, who gave his opinions about that variance. We have never suggested there was not a variance in this case. In fact, we have highlighted the variance. When their expert, Mr. DeSorga, provided a report, we believed that his analysis was wrong. And so we looked at the variance and the data that was available from the telestream system and John O'Keefe's Waze data that was on his phone that was always available to all of the experts in both sides. And when Mr. Burgess looked at the variance at the time of a three-point turn about 7 minutes before the collision, he simply matched the Waze information on Mr. O'Keefe's phone to that of the information from the telestream and saw that it was a 21 to 29 second variance. All that data was available to the defense because their expert made an improper conclusion is not our fault. This does not change the testimony of anybody. They point to Jen McCabe's text message where she said she thought she saw a motor vehicle out front that evening at 12:45. That is not consistent with the Commonwealth's timeline, but that doesn't change. That favors the defense. It does not change anything to do with ARCA. ARCA has not, as far as I've seen in any reports, ever talked about the variance, just Mr. DeSorga. And so because this is inconvenient for the defense, and because it further focuses the variance that we already discussed and provided, isn't a reason to exclude it. It's not late discovery. It's not a Rule 14 violation. It is further analysis of information that was already provided, opinions that were already provided, and it is in response to their expert's mistake about that variance. There's nothing new here. Nothing has changed.
Okay,
May I have 60 seconds, Your Honor, please?
go right ahead, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The only question I had for you yesterday, for you to respond to today, was the time, so I gave you more leeway.
And
So
you're giving me more leeway, and I appreciate it.
go right ahead.
So, 2 items, Your Honor. As I alluded to yesterday, and it's been a point that Mr. Brennan just made, we believe strongly, Your Honor, that at a minimum there needs to be a voir dire of Mr. Burgess. And we believe strongly there needs to be a voir dire because we have a serious concern that the sequestration order has been violated. He has changed a very key aspect of this matter after the testimony of Mr. Whiffen, after Mr. Whiffen presenting a timeline. In his report, Mr. Burgess, his new purported report of May 8th, he references to align it with Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone. That is the essence of Mr. Whiffen's report, is anchoring in his timeline. He did a whole timeline on Mr. O'Keefe's report. And conveniently, the proposed alteration by Mr. Burgess in his report of this clock drift now makes it very, very close to fitting within Mr. Whiffen's timeline and the theory of the prosecution. At a minimum, we need a voir dire to ask Mr. Burgess, why did he do what he did? Another reason for the voir dire. Mr. Brennan yesterday said, we were surprised to get the report. That further makes great concern as to why Mr. Burgess did what he did. Lastly, Your Honor, with regard to Mr. Brennan's point, and he made it yesterday and I corrected it, he said it again today, that supposedly our witness, Mr. DeSogra, made an error and that we're trying to correct an error of Mr. DeSogra. That is incorrect, Your Honor. Again, Mr. DeSogra was responding to Mr. Burgess's report. Mr. DeSogra's report is entirely saying, okay, Mr. Burgess says this, and therefore the defense says this. Now Mr. Burgess is changing what he is saying. So it is completely incorrect to say that Mr. DeSogra is trying to correct an error. That would require, again, Mr. DeSogra to change what he has done. Final point is this. There was also an issue, Your Honor, and this is extremely important with regard to burden shifting. There's not only the question of should this be allowed at all, there's not only the question of how much time the defense will need, but there's a third and important issue, and that's burden shifting. What Mr. Brennan proposed yesterday was a very irregular process where essentially the Commonwealth gets 3 bites at the apple for a problem that they caused. The problem we're talking about is Mr. Burgess changing a significant part of a timeline. Yes, there was a variance that he had, but he picked a range of the variance. He's now changing the variance. So what the Commonwealth is proposing is that our witnesses go forward, the aperture gets to wait, they come on, and then the aperture gets to come on yet again. We would urge
I did not understand the Commonwealth asking me that. Are you asking me to do that, Mr.
I
Brennan?
appreciate the
I'm
clarification.
not sure what he's saying, so. I
It
don't
sounds
know
like
what he's talking about.
DeBroja or whatever,
His name is DeSogra, yes.
DeSoder. You're suggesting that the Commonwealth suggested yesterday that he testifies first and then the aperture witnesses?
What I understood was going to happen is Mr. Brennan said yesterday that Dr. Welcher cannot come in until after.
No, I didn't understand that. I understood Dr. Welcher, Shannon Burgess, and then Dr. Welcher for everything that you folks received prior, January 31st or whatever the date was. And then potentially for all the new ARCA information that came in May 7th, that portion, Dr. Welcher returning on rebuttal for. Not that they were holding back Dr. Welcher completely. Is that correct, Mr. Brennan?
That's the conversation I had. That conversation I wasn't part of.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood that, Mr. Alessi.
So just so I'm clear, what is it that the rebuttal?
Mr. Brennan, all right, this is separate, and I'd really like to give everybody a break here. What is it the Commonwealth is asking to do regarding that?
Regarding Mr. Burgess or Mr. Welcher?
Dr. Welcher.
Dr. Welcher should come in and testify to his PowerPoint, all of his opinions, which address all of the prior representations and opinions of ARCA, although we still don't have any raw information, but we're ready to move forward. Regarding any new opinions, which there is over a dozen new opinions that includes testing, video, experiments, Dr. Welcher should have enough time to review, conduct his own testing, turn it over, and then in rebuttal address limited to the new issues raised by ARCA.
That's how I understood it, Mr. Alessi.
And that's how I did also, but the question is, now with the Burgess changing of the clock drift, how many times is the Commonwealth proposing that Dr. Welcher gets to come in and talk about that? Is he just going to come in and talk about it?
So you talk with Mr. Brennan about that. All right, so I'm all set for this.
There are no changes. There is no changes in the timeline. He keeps trying to portray this as something has changed. Nothing has changed. It's the exact same. He's always said there's a variance. He's been looking into the variance for a long time, and now he has found a method to show the exact variance. It's not changing. There's nothing in the reports that changes as far as the timeline. That's just an attempt to cause fear. There's nothing that has changed. We can look at the reports. It's all the same, always has been, other than now he's identified the mistake of their expert, and that led him to be able to identify the variance, which is helpful and new. And the suggestion that there's been some violation of an order, no good faith basis whatsoever. None.
Does the Commonwealth oppose a voir dire just on that one issue?
Yes, because it's suggesting that there's a good faith basis for it. Nothing has. Ian Whiffin's report was available to the defense and our experts months and months and months ago. The issue of variance has been an ongoing issue for months. There's nothing that triggers a change in the testimony to adopt or adapt to it. Our timeline has been the same since when we turned it over at the beginning. They cannot point to one thing that has changed between Dr. Welcher, Ian Whiffin, Jessica Hyde, or Shannon Burgess. They are just saying things without a good faith basis. In the reports, show us where something has changed.
Your Honor, to inform you, Your Honor, we would like to print the page in the clock adjustment because what Mr. Brennan says is
Yes,
incorrect.
and I'm happy to any information.
Thank you.
All right.
Change.
20 minutes.
Not.
Thank you.
All rise for the court, please.
mechanical fit that you were testifying about earlier with reference to item 3-1, the taillight housing, and all of the various pieces that were found in 34 Fairview, starting with the number 7.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Ms. Vallier, lastly, in reference, did you also receive some debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
Yes.
And, Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Thank you very much. And what did you find contained within that debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
So it was 5 different items. So it was debris collected from, labeled as coming from the clothing. There was mostly debris, some apparent fibers.
Were there any pieces of apparent plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
Was there dirt contained within the debris?
Yes.
And that debris was labeled as an item 17-18.18. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And what is it that you did with the debris from the gray long sleeve shirt and the orange t-shirt?
So those were all packaged in like glassine folds. And I looked through it and documented it.
When you say you documented it, did you look at it under a microscope?
Yes.
So you did an examination under a microscope, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you measure some of those items contained within the debris?
Yes.
Specifically, did you measure items of apparent clear plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
And what did you measure those items to be?
The piece of clear apparent plastic was approximately 1/8 inch by 1/16 inch.
And once you had conducted your preliminary analysis of those items, where did those items go?
I did no further examination on this myself. Christina Hanley might have examined some of these further.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Ms. Giannetti?
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to first talk fairly briefly about your reconstruction of the taillight to which you've testified. At the outset, by the way, that was item 7-3.1, am I correct?
Sorry, for which one?
That's the taillight, this 7-3.1, am I correct?
3-1, I believe.
7-3-1?
The taillight is item 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. I'm so sorry. Okay. With regard to that particular item, your lab has different departments, correct? Criminalists who do different things, correct?
Yes.
You are aware that there are scientists within your lab who do DNA analysis, for instance, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And with regard to the order of processing items, is the DNA analysis done before or after you get the item?
It's usually before.
Okay. In this case, it was before. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Were you made aware that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight, 3-1?
I'll allow it. When you were made aware of that?
No.
Once you reconstructed the taillight, you'll agree with me that it was missing a piece, correct, or pieces?
There was an empty spot on the overall reconstruction, yes.
Were you ever provided with any pieces of taillight that would have filled in that missing spot?
No.
Were you ever provided or told about any pieces recovered from 1 Meadows Ave in Canton?
No.
Were you ever told about a collision at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton?
Sustained.
In any case, you'll agree with me, there was no glass in that taillight at all, correct?
Within the taillight, I classified them as apparent plastic pieces.
There's no glass as part of the taillight, correct?
I mean, it depends on what you call, like, the bulbs usually have glass as far as I'm aware.
Those are very, very thin glass, though, correct? Those bulbs?
Yes.
All right. Now, your lab received clothing in connection with this case. You've testified to that, correct?
I received the debris labeled as coming from the clothing. I never saw the clothing at all.
Right, but you're aware that your lab received clothing before the debris got to you, correct?
Yes.
And your understanding was that that was John O'Keefe's clothing in which he was found on January 29th of 2022, correct?
It's labeled as coming from him. I'm not sure of the date that it was found.
Okay. You understand the procedure that goes on at your lab when it receives evidence?
Yes.
And you know that once clothing is brought to your lab, it's given evidence numbers, correct?
Yes.
And then one of your colleagues at the lab handled the clothing and or examined it, correct, before it came to you?
Yes.
And your understanding is that one of your colleagues retrieved debris from those items of clothing and then packaged it in a fold before it got to you, correct?
Yes.
You then open up the fold and you look at the debris, correct?
Yes.
You never saw that debris inside the clothing, correct?
Correct.
And the pieces of clothing that come in are given evidence numbers when your lab receives them, correct?
Yes.
For instance, the orange T-shirt was given or was named item number 7-17,
Yes.
and the gray long sleeve shirt was item 7-18, correct?
Yes.
And your lab is accredited, correct?
Yes.
There is a complete chain of custody from the moment the clothing was brought to the lab to when the debris was removed from the clothing, ultimately to when you're in court today handling the items, correct?
Yes. Our in-lab chain of custody extends from when we receive it to when the submitting agent it is returned to the submitting agency.
Okay. And you have complete confidence that the chain of custody at your lab is effective at making sure that the evidence does not get lost or mixed up or contaminated, right?
I mean, the chain of custody is meant to track where a piece of evidence is. The evidence unit also does inventories and audits to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be.
And you have confidence in your lab's chain of custody policies and procedures, correct?
Yes.
But you'll agree that your lab cannot control who handled the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
Yes.
There are times in which crime scene technicians or criminalists from your lab actually participate in the search for evidence at a crime scene, do they not?
Some of the people at the lab are crime scene responders, yes.
There are times when they actually take custody of evidence. Again, I'm talking about people from your lab, professionals. They take custody right from the crime scene and transport that evidence to your lab, correct?
Yes.
In those circumstances, your lab would have a complete chain of custody from discovery to seizure to testing or whatever comparison you're doing until you release the items, correct?
Yes, but the electronic chain of custody doesn't start until that item is entered into our LIMS system at the lab.
Right, but when it's entered in, it would be entered in as having been seized by somebody from your lab, correct? In the hypothetical that I'm giving you.
Yeah, there's an evidence submission form that says that this crime scene responder submitted it to the laboratory.
There are other cases, however, when the evidence is brought to your lab by the police, correct?
Yes.
Local departments have access to your lab?
For evidence drop-off, yes.
The state police have access to your lab for evidence drop-off?
Yes.
And in this case, it was not a criminalist or other professional from your lab who seized the clothing and brought it to your lab, correct?
I'm not sure.
Do you have a record of that in your report in terms of who it was that brought the material to your lab?
I could look at the evidence submission form to see who.
With the court's permission?
Yes. Okay.
I do.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Manning.
Having reviewed your reports, can you testify to the jury about who it was that brought this evidence into the lab?
So you can tell us. Go ahead.
Okay. So submission 7, all the items that are 7-, was submitted by Trooper Michael Proctor.
Were you aware of the date of the incident that gave rise to this case?
Yes.
And what was that date?
January 29th, 2022.
Were you aware that the clothing that you received was seized from the Good Samaritan Hospital that very day?
No.
What date was the clothing brought to your lab?
March 14th, 2022.
So that means that your chain of custody at the lab began on March 14th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that was about 6 weeks after the date of the incident, January 29th of 2022?
Yes.
And of course, you can't speak to the chain of custody from January 29th to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you have no information and do not know why Michael Proctor waited 6 weeks to bring this clothing to your lab, do you?
Sustained.
Do you know where Michael Proctor stored this clothing during that 6-week period?
No.
Do you know how often he was alone with access to the clothing during that 6-week period?
Sustained.
Do you know if he had access to pieces of red or clear taillight during that 6-week period?
Objection, move to strike out.
Sustained. Move on, Mr. Manning.
You were not present when the clothing was seized, correct?
Correct.
You did not have custody of this clothing from January 29th of 2022 to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
You do not know what was done with the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
You've covered this, Mr. Manning. Move on, please.
One last question. You cannot vouch for how the clothing or taillight pieces were handled before they got to your lab, correct?
I cannot.
Anything further, Mr. Lally, or are you all set? Okay. I'm not curbing it.
No. Very good. Mr. Vallier, there is a separate evidence unit contained within the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, correct?
Correct.
And fair to say you have absolutely nothing to do with that, correct?
I'm not a part of that unit.
And so your responsibility as far as chain of custody is concerned is from when you retrieve the item during your analysis and then when you return the item to the evidence unit, correct?
Correct.
And from that analysis that you performed, you found that there were 10 different items, starting with the number 7, that were a mechanical fit to 3-1, the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, correct?
If it's 10 items, I don't have, I can count them.
As far as all those items beginning with 7 that you went through or elucidated on your direct examination, each of those were a mechanical fit to each other and then to the taillight housing in 3-1.
The pieces that were previously stated, yes.
Nothing further.